Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Vaughn Sigmon. Vaughn is the co-founder of Results Driven Leadership. He is a leadership development expert, podcaster, and author. He has worked with hundreds of businesses, helping them deploy his programs and advice. His methods are brought from his real-world experience working on the front lines and living the role of being a high-impact leader. His coaching and leadership programs offer no theory, just common sense advice and direction. He's a former executive with CarMax, the world's largest and most respected company in the auto industry, and is a Fortune 100 best places to work. Vaughn's mission is to improve the impact of executives and other managers by increasing their knowledge, skills, and abilities. And I am excited to have him on the show to learn from all his experience in leadership and leadership development. So Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today, John.
It is an honor to meet you, sir. And it was funny when I was looking through your material, I was like, I got to have this guy on because your motto, and I want to start with this, your motto is no matter what business you're in the people business. And if those that listen to the show for a long time, you know, I talk about leadership as a people business. So I got to start with that. Why is that your motto and how have you developed that perspective?
So I'll tell the story very briefly. Very early in my career, I was in a position I had no business being in, but I got put in it. I was fortunate enough, somebody saw something in me, promoted me into a position of leadership. And very early, I had a mentor, a boss, Ted Boswell, who I'll never forget. You know how you have these moments in time that there's just this snapshot of a memory that you'll just remain. I remember the where I was standing, I almost remember what I was wearing, but Ted said to me, he was looking at my store I was running, and he said, always remember, Vaughn, those people are going to make you successful. No matter what business you're in the people business. And that struck me. And fortunately, I got that advice early. And I built my entire career, which I feel like was fairly successful, off of putting people first, making that always my priority. The better, and I'll have the argument with anybody. If you got great people surrounding you, you're investing in those people, you have a people first mindset, everything else becomes easier. And with the companies I work with, generally most of the dysfunction and lack of productivity is almost always a people problem. Somewhere in there, we can unpack it and become a people problem. So you get that part dialed in, which a lot of companies don't. You make you smooth the waters. You make everything infinitely easier. So I built my career. I built and scaled a lot of companies with that as a mindset, and it's worked out pretty well. And with all my clients over the past decade, we incorporate that as a framework of which we work, and been pretty remarkable, the turnarounds in some of these.
What's interesting is, you know, we talk about a lot of things in business, but, you know, we talk about a lot of hard skills. You know, you got to have good accounting skills and legal skills, and you got to be good at sales and what have you. But we don't really necessarily talk about being great at people leadership and people management and relating to people and inspiring people. But, you know, my question to you is have you found that when you take care of the people, they take care of the business? Have you had financial success with taking care of people first?
Oh yeah, 100%, John. And you know, it's you and I have both seen this. A lot of your listeners may be in this situation. They're what I call, and I recently did a blog on this, an accidental manager. We were great at something.
Yeah.
And because we were great and somebody liked us and we got along, they made us a manager. And okay, great, now I'm a manager. But that skill set that made me successful in my functional role is generally not anywhere close to the skill set I need to be successful in managing and leading people. But I'd say the statistics are somewhere north of 90% people who get promoted from within in an organization. It's done so without any benefit of training of how to do their new job. Somehow companies believe that magically somebody, because they were great at accounts receivable, they can manage an accounts receivable department. And sometimes that works. There's about 3% of the population has the natural born skills to figure it out. Most of us have to learn, including myself. And they just need the conduit of which to get better, but they're blocked from that because they're not provided. That's the reason why people listen to your podcast. It's the reason why people read your books. It's the reason why there's a whole industry around how do I learn to be a leader. But even in that case, there's a very small percentage of people who are trying to get better at their job because there's a level of oblivion that I don't know what I don't know, and it can't be me. It's got to be these people I surrounded myself with. And
Yeah.
you know what? You're right. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. It's really interesting to hear because I think that's a bit of a challenge is we take great individual contributors and we make them managers, and we don't really give them the skills to succeed in that area, or we don't promote them because they show leadership skills. Is that they were great at collecting cash, right? And so you're the accounting manager. So I think it's a good observation. Is what I saw in my corporate days as well. So one of the things I was going to talk to you about was a little bit about what's happening in the organizations today. One of the things you say, and I see it as well, that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of people that are looking for a job. So they're working in companies, but they're actively looking for another job. We've heard these terms like quiet quitting, and we have a lot of people that are not engaged, they're not motivated, they're coming in just doing their time. What what's missing, and what should leaders be thinking about? Why, and do many leaders even know that this is happening on their watch?
I'm going to answer that last question first. No, I
Yeah.
believe if they knew it, they'd be doing something about it.
Mhm.
I don't believe, well, first of all, 70% are looking for a job because if 50% of that 70% say because I'm being poorly led. There's there's ineffective leadership or management that's in charge of me, and I don't like my job.
Mhm.
However, I don't believe for a minute those managers get up in the morning and say, I'm going to go be the worst boss possible today. I'm just going to make sure
Mhm.
nobody likes me during the course of the day. They want to go do a good job. They desire to be highly effective and have a high impact on not only their company but their careers and the people who are working for them. But they, again, I said it earlier, they don't know what they don't know. But I believe if there was a better method of internally promoting and developing emerging leadership within organizations, if more organizations understood that there's a roadmap to success, if more organizations, companies realize that there's a people aspect that's creating a huge cost. It's $400 billion a year plus that turnover cost corporations. If they were able to put that in dollars and cents and say, wow, if I could invest some number of dollars into making sure my people were prepared to take on this role. And even if they're in the role, what am I doing to enhance, sharpen their saw, get them better, that organizations would see a dramatic change in not only just turnover, but buy-in and engagement and commitment and inspiration. And people would start asking questions and being more innovative, because that's what happens in organizations. And I've worked with one, CarMax, that where you put your people first, you invest in your leadership. We were very selective about not only who got placed in a leadership role, but what we did to get them prepared for that.
Mhm.
I saw the difference. I've got lots of comparisons in my personal life where I've worked at both kinds of companies. CarMax being a Fortune 100 best places to work was a very different experience. And but it goes deep into the DNA of the organization. It starts at the top. There's a discipline and commitment that has to take place that I don't think a lot of organizations, one, don't consider it, and two, they look at it and say, gee, I don't know that I want to do that
Mhm.
because that's outside of my comfort zone. I don't understand that, much less know how to go create a people first mindset. So it doesn't happen. But it's created this pandemic of quiet quitting, this high turnover, this disengagement, this 2 year tenure that most employees have today versus 4 to 6 in years past. it's this void of giving them what they need to be successful in their jobs. And it's baffling to me. It keeps me in business.
Yeah.
But I would rather work myself out of a job, frankly, if companies and organizations realize that there's this huge opportunity that takes a very little investment that would provide their leadership, which would in turn provide their team members with the rocket fuel to be much better at what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've seen it as well in throughout my career is that when you do figure that out, when you realize that, people are going to be that rocket fuel. It's funny because I found it out the hard way. Like I got promoted to be in my first manufacturing leadership role. I was a general manager of a manufacturing plant at 32 years old. I was the youngest plant manager in the history of this one factory. And I had never been in a manufacturing role before. I'd been in quality engineering, what have you. But so I really did learn how to rely on my team to get the input, the ideas, and what's working, what's broken, what do we need to do, what do you think we should do. So I actually engaged my team out of ignorance, and what I found was that there was this deep treasure trove of knowledge that was untapped, that nobody had ever asked them these questions before, and they were more than excited to say, yes, someone's listening to me. This is what I've been trying to say this for years. And you're like, holy cow, that could double our output on this particular product line, or this could improve our profits. It was remarkable once I unleashed the ideas of people, and we ended up just massively improving our financial performance. And a lot of my peers were like, what did you do? And I was like, literally, I don't know what I did. All I did was I started talking to the people, and it released all this pent up energy that often we never talk to those experienced people. We never engage them, and so they go home with that knowledge in their head every night, and they never share it with the company.
And they're busting to share it. They want to be
Yeah,
heard. That is, in fact, one of the number one causes for disengagement, dissatisfaction in workplaces. Nobody listens to me. My opinion doesn't
yeah,
count.
yeah,
And however, I think you probably had the confidence, you had the internal ability to be willing to humble yourself enough to ask for input, allow that input to be received and do something with it. There's a vast majority of the population that is afraid of doing that.
mm,
And so it takes I think you are a special person based on all your great accomplishments. But I think if someone realized that, okay, I've got to do that, but I fear
yeah,
that this bad thing is going to happen if I start taking advice. It's going to make me look weak. It's going to make
yeah,
me look
yeah,
dumb. And it's none of that. It's going to make you
yeah,
loved. It's what it's going to do.
yeah,
But this collaboration it's such a brilliant part of leadership. A lot of people avoid it because it takes too much time.
yeah.
I don't have time to ask all these questions. I know what to do. I'm just going to tell people what to do.
Yeah,
And okay, let me know how that's working out for you. You may be fine, but I bet you're being fine like this.
yeah,
And so the collaborative part of it, two two elements to it. One, either I have a natural tendency to be confident enough to do that, which you're blessed with. But secondly, if I know that I have to do it and someone can teach me how to do it with the safety in mind that these people aren't going to take advantage of this, that they're not going to give me bad advice, that they don't approach me with ill content, or if my boss is going to think, well, if his people are figuring out everything, what do I need them for? That's never the case. It's never
never,
the
yeah,
case. You know that, I know that. Everybody that's ever used a collaborative approach absolutely knows that you soar and you're loved and you're appreciated. And back to the peer thing, I had similar experiences. My team, I had an incredible team in my last decade of work that just lapped everybody in the organization in almost every KPI. And people would ask me the same question, what are you doing out there? And I would more or less tell them what I was
Yeah.
doing. And they said, well, can I come out and watch how you do that? Sure, come on out. Let's watch that. And they come out and literally, I think they got back on the plane to fly back to wherever they were flying back to and say, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like that. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's how we do it. So
Yeah.
fear of
Yeah.
change, that changes. Oh man, are we hard to change as humans?
Yeah. Yeah. We are. And I think that fear, in my 22 years in corporate, I saw a lot of fear-based decision making, and it was scared of looking bad, scared of missing my bonus, scared of being vulnerable, afraid of looking stupid, and so I think we don't do that because there is a lot of fear in there. And I think if you get rid of that fear and you realize that, I think that people are amazing, right? And they're often more than willing to talk to you about their ideas and their frustrations and ways that things can get better if you talk to them. Yeah.
100%. Open yourself up. Lead by listening is something
Yeah.
I share a lot. But fear is also an acronym.
Mm,
False expectations appearing real. That's not the first
mm,
time you've heard that,
yeah.
but it's something that hopefully we shared with somebody today that gets them to stop a little bit and think about it. Um, I'll tell a quick story. I had I back to collaboration. I would do group calls, and listen, I had 3,000 employees that reported up through to me. But I would take an hour a month with a group of sales consultants. I'd take an hour a month with auto technicians. I'd take an hour a month with business office associates, and just how can we do better? How can we do better? How can we do better? And I got some brilliant ideas, but one that came out of it came from, and hopefully he listens to this show, Francis Nyland-Kinde, who was a part-time salesperson in Ontario, California. And he was on one of these calls and he said, hey, we've got this problem with this. I think if we did that, that it would be a game changer for us. And he gave me what was one of those ideas like, why didn't
Mm,
I ever think of that?
yeah.
Right? It was right there. It was so right in our face. Why didn't we think of that? Francis, great idea. Let me run it up the flagpole. And I'm telling you, it was such a great idea. Within a month, we had it dialed in, the software written, and it was off. And it was a $500 million idea
From a part-time employee.
from a part-time employee. And he had that. And again, I had lots of great ideas, but if I'd never asked, I never would have known. And that was 500 million. That's compounded over decades
Yeah. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, it was like, oh my God, that was the simplest idea in the world, but it was brilliant. And if
Yeah.
I'm not tapping into that experience, that resource, that knowledge, I don't have to know it all. That makes my job easier.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it really does. The collective wisdom of a team, I think, is essential in today's rapidly changing environment. You need a lot of different brains that are thinking. If you're just depending on the one guy in the corner office to make all the decisions, you're going to get passed by. I really do believe that. I think that we do need, and even crazy ideas, because sometimes, like I've got many stories I've been in my books about crazy ideas that worked and saved us millions, and reduced times to move manufacturing plant. Just amazing ideas, but they were just crazy ideas. But you just have to be humble enough to listen and go, okay, wait, repeat that again. You're like, oh, that might work, and just having that, because the best ideas I've ever done in my whole career have never come from me. They've always come from someone else. Always. Yeah.
I think I can safely agree that same with me.
Yeah. Yeah. But the
Yeah.
leader's job is to have that radar out and just say, oh, shoot, that one's big. And being able to say, let's, like you said, run it up the flagpole, let's implement it. And then, of course, the people get excited when you implement my idea. Like, yeah, we listen, we care,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which creates buy-in and there's more ideas and
Right.
enthusiasm.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
There's the rocket fuel.
Yeah. Exactly. One of the things that you and I share, another common view is, in fact, I was presenting at NC State this morning, a leadership a session. One of the things I was talking about was annual reviews, and you say that annual reviews are a waste of time, should be killed. And you and I share that idea. I don't believe in them. But what should leaders be doing instead? How should we be doing reviews with our employees?
Brief preamble. Gallup did this poll last year, 3 million employees around feedback,
Mm,
performance feedback. 92% of these 3 million employees said, I want feedback, and I want developmental feedback. I want negative feedback,
mm,
for want of a better
mm,
word. I want to know what I'm doing wrong. When they surveyed the managers of these same employees and asked the managers, how often are you giving feedback? And they said, oh, all the time. We give great feedback. Same surveys, same employees. How often are you getting feedback? Well, I haven't received any feedback
mm,
in over 6 months. So
mm,
there's this gap between what managers think they're doing and what the employees, which is really the important element. That's the important
mm,
part of the equation here. There's this big gap. Managers think they're giving feedback, employees don't. It's about frequency. Every 7 days, they need some kind of feedback, every 7 days. And so that has to become part of your management style, your leadership style. I call it manage by walking around.
mhm,
Um, but at the very least, I'm a huge proponent of 30-day reviews. 30-day reviews. And boy, I'd introduce that to a CEO of the company. They look at me like I grown an extra head. It's like 30 days. We don't have time for all. Well, you're comparing that to annual reviews, which are a gigantic pain in the butt. It takes all this preparation. I've got to fill out all these forms. If you do a 30-day review properly, it's a 30-minute conversation. It's
yep.
just a formalized, let's sit down. How are you doing? What do you think you're doing well? What do you think you need to work on? What do I need to do to help support you? Here's some goals for the next 30 days. How do you want to go achieve those? Have them give you some action plans, how they're going to achieve that. 30 minutes, you're in and out, and they've gotten their feedback. You are maintaining a level of understanding and control over what's happening. You know what everybody's aiming towards. Now I know what's happening in everybody's mind because they shared it with me. It is an amazing process that very few companies deploy. So it should be at least once a week, formal every 30 days, and you never have to do another annual review.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good. I mean, feedback should be timely, and I think the annual review process has got to the point where it's just a bureaucratic exercise, and nobody really cares. And I never cared. I never cared throughout my entire corporate, like, oh, it's annual review time, and even my bosses knew it was sort of like a wink and a like, here I did. Here's a review. It's done. Okay, thanks.
Well, we
Because
cared about one thing.
what's that?
What's the raise?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Exactly. Exactly. And that's about it. But yeah, so I'm glad to hear that. I do think that's really good. 7 days feedback, 30-day reviews, do that. It's much more timely. It's much more and again, it's if there's issues that have to be corrected, they're gonna get addressed early instead of waiting for this annual process. So absolutely, I love that idea. Um, you had some other things that I was just interested about. People are people. I say often say that people are messy, and but they're also amazing, and being a leader means you got to deal with both of them. So what's some advice for dealing with the difficult people, and even if it might even be your boss? So have you got any insight on that with all your experience dealing with difficult individuals?
One of my favorite topics, John, and one that we could go on about for a long time. Um, First thing, if you're dealing with a difficult person, they're not going to fix themselves.
Hmm.
That challenge is never going to go away on its own. So you have to deal with it. Now, if there's an efficient way and there's an effective way of going about correcting it, right? The efficient way is bring them in, tell them what they're doing wrong, not going to accept it again, send them out. And the likelihood of that having any long-term positive consequences is pretty low. Or we could bring them in, have a a constructive conversation with them, tell them what the situation is, let them understand what the impact of whatever their behavior is, and then talk to them about why. Help them with critical thinking. Why is this? How does this happen? What propels you to do this? Be honest with them, but do it in a Socratic approach where you're asking them questions, where you're unpacking this issue with them to where they're telling you, you're not telling them. We're so much more likely as humans to be committed to what we say we're going to do, or owning what we say we did versus somebody telling us. There's a completely different listening that takes place. So to be effective, we have to have a difficult conversation that does not go in with a predetermined outcome. We don't know, but we have to go in with an open mind. We have to hold our opinions close. Please do not predetermine with a bias as to why this person is behaving the way they are, or what truly happened in this situation. There's the old saying that there's three sides to the truth, right? So you've got your understanding, you got your perception. I need to get their perception, and somewhere in the middle, we have the true reason. Once we have that, now let's discuss how that doesn't happen again, or how we can fix that, how we can improve that, how we can improve that. And so much of dealing with difficult conversations gets delayed because of fear of confrontation. Almost 70% of the population is naturally inclined to avoid confrontation. The rest of us, the other 30%, if we're willing to go have a conversation with someone about being difficult, then we're going to do it in a way that is going to be ineffective by it being a one-way conversation. It's a monologue, not a dialogue.
Yeah.
In both cases, if we change our approach to this, know how to properly have it, how to have a difficult conversation with a difficult person, and we approach it with the right structure, have a proper conversation that is not heated. We don't bring emotion into it. We have a goal in mind, but we're not sure how we're going to reach that goal. The goal is we're going to correct this, but it's not going to be my way. It's going to be the way this employee or this boss, and bosses are, that's slightly different, but it's a similar approach. But it's all about transparency. Let's talk about it. Avoiding the conversation, A, not going to fix it. B, is just going to continue keeping you up at night and frustrated. And here's the other thing. Generally, when you have a difficult person, it's not just you that they're impacting. It's a lot of people in the organization. It's their coworkers. And so it's not just you that needs to deal with this. Your team needs you to deal with it. Believe me, they're watching you, wondering, when in the heck is this person going to do? When is my boss going to deal with this? And the longer you wait, there's a horrible byproduct, is their respect for you is eroding. And generally we wait until something festers to the point where we just can't take it anymore, and then we deal with it. Where we may have had the opportunity to fix this early on, have a much better outcome. Nobody has a benefit from somebody losing their job. There's no benefit to hiring somebody and them losing their job. The company doesn't benefit, the employee doesn't benefit. We only benefit if an employee is successful. But I've got to, as a leader, have the conversations, be transparent enough about either their performance or their attitude or their behaviors in a way that is non-judgmental, but with a Socratic approach where we're asking open-ended questions to get them to understand what they're doing, how it's impacting others, and then walk away with a commitment of how they're going to go resolve this. But that takes practice. It takes patience. It takes a little bit of brave to go do that, go have these kind of conversations. But once you learn how to do it, and it is a learned skill, once you learn how to do it, you'll never put them off. You'll have very few of these issues anymore, and everybody else is going to respect you tremendously, because you just don't put up with things. It's not because you're Mr. Tough Person. It's because you just deal with stuff.
Yeah. I think that you've said a lot of things that are really important that I think hopefully listeners, you're pulling out of this. It's not going to fix itself. right? Ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away, right? And we talk about that. If people have listened to the show for a long time, we talk about how, like on a submarine, there was a fire. We ran towards the fire, not away from it. So we had to put it out before it spread. And this is the same thing. You got a bad employee, it's not just affecting you, it's affecting everyone around. All of the employees are affected, and everyone's watching and waiting for you to do something about it. It's your job to take care of it. And if you don't, it's only going to get worse. And I love this idea. It's not going to fix itself. You got to take the action. I love it. Such great, yeah, it's a great tool, listeners. Just what Vaughn went through. Great way to deal with those problematic and challenging employees. And again, if you do it and do it right, you can turn some of those worst employees into some of your best employees if you can do it right. And again, that's a win for you if you can do that. Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. So, what final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Well, we talked about it early in the conversation. If you want to be super successful in your management leadership career, get really good at the people part of it, study it, get coaching, get training, invest in yourself to be better at the people aspect of the business. It's not so much just the soft skills. There's approaches and processes to dealing with people. It's not just having empathy and that sort of thing. Yes, you need to have that, but it's structuring my approach. There's process. So like go find some solutions for yourself, educate yourself, because it is the fastest path to success possible.
Well, you heard it. Vaughn is very experienced. He's been in the trenches many decades, and he's saying the same things that many of our guests have said, what I have said for years. So I'm so glad to hear this. Again, it's all about the people. Get good at it. Leadership is a people business. Get really good at it, and you're going to find you're going to turn around your performance much faster. It's getting to know your people, getting the most out of them, and really that's what leadership is all about. It's about people. This is fantastic. How can listeners find out more about you and your company?
Please visit my website, rdltraining.com. There's tons of blogs, resources on there. All of our training programs, if you're interested in looking at that, are on there and listed out. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vaughn Sigmon in the world, so I'm easy to find. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. If anybody, I had 3 messages today that I responded to some of my followers. I've got this situation. I'd love to give free advice.
Fantastic. Again, listeners, how many times do I have to tell you this? There's free stuff. So you just listen to Vaughn. Vaughn's got all this great advice. He's been experienced. He's highly experienced, been in the trenches, been doing this a long time. And guess what? He's got a website with a lot of free information on it. And he says, connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me a question. I'll give you free advice. I mean, come on. What more can you ask for? The show is free. The advice is free. All you have to do is reach out and you're going to get this information. You're going to get to be better at being a leader. And so we'll go ahead and put links in the show notes for Vaughn's website and for his LinkedIn profile. But again, connect with Vaughn, learn from the success he's had, and find out how you can be better as a leader and in your leadership journey. So yeah, take advantage of these free resources. It's really important that you do that. Vaughn, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your experience, your thoughts, your, again, practical advice, because I think this is exactly what we need to build a world with better bosses. So thanks for coming on the show and sharing your experience.
Thank you, John. And thank you for all that you do between your books and this podcast. You're an amazing resource yourself. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.